man, I'm gonna break my monitor, I swear.
Ratchet Clank 2 was an absolute success, basically improving everything back in the first game gameplay-wise. And with another year slowly approaching, so does another Ratchet Clank game. So here we go, 2 video games down and only 1 more to go in the Ratchet Clank trilogy. It was really enjoyable coming back to a series I loved back in the day, and more importantly, I hope you enjoyed what you've seen as we cover the 3rd installment in the series, Ratchet Clank 3 Up Your Arsenal, which came out in the year 2004 in America, November the 2nd. Then Europe got the game on November the 12th, then finally in Australia, the game was released on November the 18th. This game is considered to many die-hard fans as the best Ratchet Clank game in the series. And I will admit, I freaking love this game too, but it will be interesting to see if my overall opinion has changed about Up Your Arsenal, or if it remains the same all these years ago. And who knows, maybe I'll be leaving this video saying that it is my least favorite game in the trilogy. Did you hear that? What is that noise? What is that noise? Oh, I see, it's only just an angry mob. So before starting this review off, just a small quick plug that if you have not seen my Ratchet & Clank 1 and 2 reviews yet, it's highly recommended you check those out before continuing onto this video. Link in description, and with all that said, let's wrap everything up with Up Your Arsenal. After the events of the 2nd installment, Ratchet & Clank plays a little fun game of chess. During this period, it's been revealed that Clank has his own TV show called Secret Agent Clank, which is a parody of any spy films you can think of up top of your head. After changing the channel, Ratchet sees his home planet, Veldin, being invaded by the Tyrannoids, led by a new villain, Dr. Nefarious. Ratchet and Clank head back to the Solana Galaxy to stop the invasion, but they also learn from the President that only one person throughout the galaxy has managed to defeat Nefarious. And that just so happens to be Scrunch the Monkey.
You saved me. Why?
Monkey.
Just kidding, it's actually Captain Quark. Quark did end up losing his memory and thinks he's a monkey, so I guess you can say he's gone bananas. Get it? Cause bananas is another word for crazy. And monkeys just so happens to like Alright, that was a shit joke. After regaining his memory, Captain Quark forms the Q-Force. No, not that one. And after learning Dr. Nefarious's plans is to turn everyone into robots and stop organic life forms, Ratchet & Clank aims to take on what is their biggest challenge yet and stop Nefarious's plans of galaxy domination. I don't mind the story in this game. It tells you who's the main villain straight away, and you just go through an adventure of how these two heroes are going to approach it as they get towards Act 3 of the storyline. I will say there is no major plot twist throughout the game compared to the previous 2 games on how they had a bit of plot twist to keep the player engaged, because you never know what's going to happen next. But in Up Your Arsenal, everything stays its course from start to finish, but it's not terrible by any means. If Insomniac can tell a good story at the end of the day, which they did, then I'm not really bothered by it. I think the closest they got to a plot twist is Clank planting seeds to turn his back on Ratchet when Clank's eyes turns red, but as it turns out, Nefarious just created a clone of Clank as he kidnapped the real Clank and named the clone Clunk.
I am sorry, Ratchet. This is all my fault.
You think? Great work, detective.
Also, I'll say this now in case I end up forgetting about it. Back in Ratchet & Clank 1 and 2, before checking out a new planet, you get a little intro about the planet and what you're going to experience. In Ratchet & Clank 3, they still do the planet cutscenes, but then halfway into the game they just sort of forgot about it. A character tells you where to go to next, and yeah, that's it. To me, it does remove the saying, show but don't tell. But anyhow, as far as characters go, I have discussed Ratchet, Clank, and Quark in the past few videos, so I'll just move on to Dr. Nefarious. Dr. Nefarious is a really great villain. Not only he is a dangerous threat, but despite how terrifying he is, he acts like a bit of a dork sometimes. Sure, Nefarious is labeled as serious, but then later on, he delivers some pretty funny one-liners, and even to this day, I still get a good laugh out of it. I can totally see why a lot of people consider him as a villain fan favorite, as he'll later go on to be the main villain for many future Ratchet & Clank titles. But really, I believe his butler Lawrence deserves a round of applause too. Combine Nefarious' serious and wacky over-the-top humor, along with Lawrence's sarcastic one-liners, make them a great duo when put together.
That's what makes it so good, Janice. Feel it. My heart is pounding like an anvil.
Oh, this is the best part of my day.
Definitely a highlight in up your arsenal. Because you're back in the Solana Galaxy, you'll see characters from the first game make a return here. Helga, Big Al, Skid McMark show up to help us, and by helping us, they just slack off by sitting in a chair and eating some meatloaf. But you also see some new characters as well. Sasha, a lady in charge of the galactic ship called the Phoenix, the President, a ripoff of former President Bill Clinton. He's also the father of Sasha, the more you know. You also have Clunk and Scrunch the Monkey as mentioned before, the Galactic Rangers, protectors of the Solana Galaxy, and yeah, I suppose the plumber makes a special appearance too. Excuse me, I think you locked the door. Yeah, he's not foreshadowing anytime soon, that fucker. So, you know the drill, son. Play through planet after planet, finding enough information while defeating enemies, grabbing collectibles, and upgrading weapons. Basically the same as the second game, but you will notice there are a few added features to once again make the gameplay even better. There's now a second quick select wheel, so not only that'll open up more weapons and gadgets to choose from, but you also don't have to go through the main menu that much. I didn't talk much about the vendor, but one of my tiny nitpicks in Ratchet & Clank 1 and 2, you have to cycle to each weapon to refill your ammo, which is a bit of a time waster. But here, they included a max out ammo, which allows you to fill up every weapon you currently own without having to scroll across. And I think it's a pretty neat addition. There's two new box types. One is the multiplier, which doubles the amount of bolts and experience gained for a limited amount of time, and Inferno mode, where your armor and wrench attack will be increased for a limited amount of time. I do like the idea of the multiplier box, but I wasn't a fan of Inferno. I mean, it sounds good on paper, but why can't I use my weapons in that mode? That sucks. I suppose what I should mention, and you could put this up for debate or not, from what I've been searching, some people are not a fan of the color text being orange compared to the second game that had a nice blue color. I can understand their opinion on that topic. Orange is a pretty dominant color and it can look unappealing to the eye. It's like with Fallout New Vegas, even though I love that game, but again, the orange can seem a bit too much for some people, so they just change it to green or blue to make it serviceable. I personally don't mind it however, as I got used to it halfway into the game, but it's a pretty interesting topic to discuss on using colors in video games. The weapons lineup here are just as good as Going Commandos, and while I do prefer the second installment weapons lineup more, but Up Your Arsenal's weapons are pretty good regardless. It starts off with the Shock Blaster, a typical shotgun, and the Nitro Launcher, an explosive gun. This to me is the best startup weapons in any Ratchet & Clank game. So much destruction and so much damage to inflict early on that it really sets the tone of what the game is going to feel like from the beginning all the way to the end. Throughout the game, you can also obtain the Plasma Whip, a whip that's covered in fire, the N60 Storm, your blaster for this game, the Spitting Hydra, which locks onto multiple enemies and hit them at the same time, the Annihilator, which is your rocket launcher, the Disc Blade Gun, which shoots out discs to attack your enemies, and the Rift Inducer, and when firing, it creates a black hole and enemies will get sucked into it. This is a great weapon to use, by the way. And then you have the Rhino 3. Think of it as if you put the Rhino 2 and the Zodiac together, and when you upgrade it, it becomes super OP as hell. And speaking of upgrading, Insomniac once again takes it to another level. Your weapons will start off in version 1, and when your weapon upgrades, it'll move over to version 2, being a little bit more powerful than before. And you can upgrade your weapons all the way to version 5, meaning you'll be upgrading your weapons more frequently and getting stronger while you're at it. Weapons from Ratchet & Clank 2 make an appearance here. You can get them from Slim Cognito, and if you have a save file of the second game, you can get some of those available weapons for free. Cool thing as well is that you can upgrade those weapons too. Overall, I freaking love the weapons here, but I will admit there are some weapons I will try my best to avoid. Like the Fluke's rifle, which is your sniper rifle, and the Inflector, which is a mind control type of weapon. And by the time I fully had enough powerful guns, I do not think those pointless weapons had any use in the game. And once again, I felt like I didn't want to spend money on a product that'll be a waste in the long run. I'm saving these bolts to buy some protection at the armor vendor. And on that note, I always hate that people have to spend lots of money on products that amount to absolutely nothing, instead of saving that money for something better in the future. So, do you guys want to see my video game collection? You also have your gadgets here as well. You have the refractor, you can use it to reflect laser beams, the Tiraguise, which is just like your Hologuise in Ratchet & Clank 1. You disguise as a Tyrannoid and enter without sounding the alarm. You also have a mini game to try out too. The Hypershot, which is your dynamo and swing shot combined together, and the Warp Pad, allowing Ratchet to place warp points and teleport to get past sections. I honestly think the gadgets here are not as good as the second installments. Sure, you have a couple of decent ones, but it's not as impactful, especially with the Warp Pad. It gets introduced towards the end of the game and it only gets used twice. And then you have your Hacker, a gadget to bypass security defenses. You partake in a minigame, and this one I feel goes on for way longer than it should. I don't know if I should consider this gadget as a puzzle type because it doesn't even feel like a puzzle. All you do is shoot the red, grab the green, not much else to say there. Every time I get up to one of these sections, I'm just saying to myself,
oh shit, here we go again.
The gravity boots are here as well, but again you have to earn them instead of having it available straight away. And while replaying this game, I noticed something that was off, and then it hit me. Ow! There are no grind railing stages. I never noticed this until just recently. I find it bizarre that there are no grind rails, as I think it plays a good factor on Ratchet's character being fearless and loves to go fast. Maybe there was a reason why it's not here, but it just feels weird not seeing those grind rails in this game. The planets you explore are still really good to check out. You have the ocean planet in Planet Aquados, a jungle themed planet in Florana, and a film area located in Hollow Star Studios, to name a few. This game also introduces its own hub area named the Starship Phoenix. You get to partake in training courses, play video games, more on that later, and check out some trophies you accomplished throughout the game. One thing I really liked was when you're at the head of the ship, you get to witness characters interact with each other, and I thought it was a really nice touch on the creative side, almost feeling like you're really a part of this whole journey. You can still change your ship's design, but there's no ship battles within the game, so it almost feels pointless to upgrade your ship. I will say that the planet's design and detail is not up to par compared to the first and second game in my opinion. You could argue that two of the reasons might be because this game only had 1 year to be completed before release, or the fact that Sony requested this game to feature multiplayer, so you could imagine that a fair bit of time went into that feature. And while it was cool to see different planets and up your arsenal, the majority of the planets here are very linear, meaning that most planets will always have a straight line to follow. Compared to the previous two games, again, they had different pathways you can take, and it was a surprise for first time players. What could happen if you reach the end of the path? A boss battle? A collectible perhaps? It felt like a mystery, and at the same time, you're looking at the different environments of the planet itself. Now, it's not really that big of a deal, as I know some people would prefer a linear area to explore in a Ratchet & Clank game. but I will admit that it does remove the creativity and different design set pieces of what a planet could really offer. Which is why I think some people consider Dax as their favorite planet to check out, and it's obvious to see why. And that's due to Ratchet dancing and shaking his bum around. And that's hot as fuck, bruh. The arena battles make their return here, and it's all located under one planet. What's interesting here is that even though you will be fighting against enemies in the arena, half of the challenges consist of platforming, which is not that bad of an idea. Jumping around to make it to the next platform and taking out enemies to reach to the end. And as for the arena battle itself, I know I said that Ratchet & Clank 2's arena battles are one of my favorite ones, and I gotta say, I think the third installment's versions of those arena battles are also my favorite ones too. At first glance, it was pretty intimidating seeing the arena due to being a lot bigger than the second game's arena. There's a lot of cooler challenges, I like the addition of the commentator talking during the battle, and while the bosses here don't hit well compared to Chainblade and a B2 brawler, I enjoyed the arena battles in this game. Just wish I can say the same for the sewers. The sewers act as the open area you explored back in Ratchet & Clank 2 in collecting crystals to earn bolts. And while 2 has an open world to explore around, here in number 3 feels very cramped and you just literally go through the sewers in what feels like the same design set pieces again and again. A couple of new gameplay features Up Your Arsenal presents are the Galactic Ranger battles. You join up with them in a fight to stop the Tyrannoid invasion. You might be asked to defend the Rangers, take flight in a hover ship, or be placed in turret sections. And oh boy, do we love a bit of turret sections or what, fellas? I'm honestly pretty mixed about these battles. On one hand, they're a good way to earn more bolts and upgrade your weapons more quickly, but on the other hand, this type of gameplay gets way too repetitive as you're facing the same enemy types over and over with the same objective in mind, being to attack and kill the Tyrannoids. I will admit, it seemed cool going back to the planets you were familiar with back in Ratchet & Clank 1, but it just looks very different here and to me doesn't resemble those areas at all. And then later on, I ended up realizing that the majority of them are just multiplayer maps copy and pasted into the story. I understand a few people I know enjoy this type of gameplay, but I don't think it's for me. Going back to what I said about facing the same enemy types earlier, this also brings me to another issue, and that is the lack of different variety of enemies. I hate making comparisons, but this game is giving me no choice. In Ratchet & Clank 1 and 2, you had a number of different enemy types, and a single enemy type is strictly used to this one single planet alone. And that brings in realism and the endless possibilities on what you'll be able to witness and see along your travels, friend or foe. In Ratchet & Clank 3, while you do see a few planets being home to just one enemy type, but for the most part you'll be facing the same Tyrannoids, the same robots, the same ninja robots, and that to me lacks creative freedom on what those potential planets can offer when it comes to enemy types. And the second new gameplay feature is you can play as Quark in this gameplay section that reminds me of Mega Man. Quark can shoot his weapons, jump, and climb ladders. The objective is to reach to the end of the level while collecting tokens, and the more tokens you grab, the more bolts you earn while completing the levels. You can also collect a health upgrade, increasing Quark's health, and remember, there's one in every level. I actually really like Quark's gameplay here. It's harmless, fun, and breaks the gameplay well in my opinion. It also has a nice soundtrack to complement these levels as well. And just before we move on to the next topic, up, up, down, down, left, right, circle, square, square. There we go. What, I'm not making a Ratchet & Clank 3 video without referencing a frickin' tutu. Clank gameplay section is here as well. Not much to really say here, you still have your gadget bots, as well as Scrunch the monkey helps out too. You shoot a banana gun, and wherever the banana lands, the monkey will follow it, allowing the monkey to stand on switches and help distract the enemy so we can safely move forward. I don't mind Clank's gameplay here, but I honestly do prefer the Clank levels back in Ratchet & Clank 2. As always, the collectibles are here. You have your skill points to unlock cheats for the game, you have titanium bolts, and collecting enough will allow you to buy skins for Ratchet, so you could turn him into Sumo Ratchet. Whatever tickles your fantasies, I suppose. You also have trophies to collect too, and once earning them, they'll be added to the trophy room, and collecting all of them will give you access to the museum. And while I don't have the museum gameplay footage to show off, I really liked the museum when I first got the chance to view it back in the day. The boss fights here, I like to think, are improved. While some of them are pretty easy, but there's a little bit of a challenge this time around, and thankfully it's paced properly. The final boss, Dr. Nefarious, was a really good final boss overall, as it showed that you are in for the fight of your life. And again, while I won't be spoiling the third acts, but I thought it was a really good final boss overall. Now, I only have 2 more topics to talk about before we wrap things up. First off, the multiplayer. I feel like the multiplayer played a huge factor into this game. Now again, this was requested by Sony to have multiplayer, and as a kid, I never had the chance to try it out, but I would imagine it was pretty popular at the time. You get to create your profile by selecting the skin and a username. You can decide what map to play in and what type of game mode to partake in. I couldn't connect to online, so I suppose local play will have to do for my gameplay footage. Well, time to grab my second controller and leave it to the side cause I've got no friends to play with me. But again, I would like to think that if you do play against other players, it would be pretty fun. And because you could play online against players on the PlayStation 2 system, it was ahead of its time, and even some people out there still hook their PS2 to the internet and still play it on a regular basis. That's commitment, if you ask me. I can't complain about multiplayer. It's there if you want to try it out, and you're not forced to play it if you don't want to. And finally, the New Game Plus stuff. All your experience and weapons carry over to the New Game Plus, and once again, they take it to the next level. Buying a better upgraded version of any weapon will allow you to upgrade your guns even further. The Bolt multiplier is back, and here's to me the best part about this game. If your Bolt multiplier goes up to times 20 and hitting the box multiplier, it still doubles up. So you could get your Bolt counter to times 40 and combine it with your Rhino and the box breaker. You have what is the most satisfying moment in video gaming history. So much chaos, so much devastation, and so much joy. And that was Ratchet & Clank 3 Up Your Arsenal. I'm gonna say this right now that this game has one of the best third-person shooter gameplay in the trilogy and in the entire series. Insomniac once again added some new features and at the same time tuning up its current gameplay just a touch to provide the best experience possible. Having said that though, this game to me does share a few problems I have. Some planets didn't feel 100% completed, the sewers are underwhelming, the hacker gadget absolutely sucks, and the Galactic Rangers battle stages weren't my cup of tea. I will admit, I am being a bit too harsh and a bit too negative to a point where people may assume I hate this game, which is completely false. I love Up Your Arsenal, and I think the reason why I'm being such a poopy pants is due to myself getting older and noticing some set pieces here and there. Maybe if Insomniac didn't have to worry about multiplayer, then maybe this game would have had so much potential into being one of the greatest games out there. But even so, a lot of people I like to believe would counteract that statement that this game is still the greatest game ever made despite the added multiplayer. So the question I have to ask myself is Ratchet & Clank 3 Up Your Arsenal the weakest game in the trilogy? Well, in my honest opinion, no, I don't think that is, but allow me to make one final point and we'll take it home. All 3 Ratchet & Clank games are really great overall, but they all share some flaws. The first game told a beautiful story about the duo and how they can work together, but the game itself can feel outdated without the ability to strafe. Ratchet & Clank 2 improved everything you needed out of the first game, but it also featured a lackluster final boss and a weird difficulty spike. And the third game, while features some outstanding gameplay, but the game itself feels a bit rushed to me. It was hard deciding which game I prefer more, so here's how I would put it if I was forced to. Ratchet & Clank 2 is my favorite game in the trilogy, followed by 3, then finally 1. At the end of the day, it all comes down to personal opinions, and that is how I feel about the trilogy as a whole. I definitely recommend playing all 3 of them if you get the chance to, but try to get them on the PlayStation 2 if possible, because to me, it's the definitive way to experience those games. Instead of seeing some weird bugs on the PlayStation 3, like the ship transitions to a planet being off sync. Need I say more? Oh man, that door is extremely difficult to get through. So anyway, I'm here for... Huh. It looks like the video is pretty much done now. So I guess you don't really need me anymore. Now hold on just a second, you cheeky little fucker. For the past couple of reviews, all you've been doing is giving out predictions about what my next review is going to be. So I gotta ask, how do you know all this? Are you some sort of mind reader that knows exactly what I'm gonna be thinking? God damn it, answer me already! Look, listen, I'm just doing what the script is telling me to do. What script? Look at the top left corner in your monitor. Oh. Yeah, I'm basically supposed to be the plumber in your Trilogy reviews, and since you wrote my lines down for this topic, I figured I'd show up then and say whatever I needed to say. So even now with the conversation that we're having, we're basically just following a script. Yeah, pretty much. Okay. So, now what? Would you like a slice of brownie? Well, that depends. What does the script say? Fuck yeah, I would love a slice of brownie. But anyway, that includes my Ratchet Clank Trilogy review. Thank you to everyone who stuck around and to check them out. And as far as the next review is concerned, trust me, you ain't ready for what I've got in store. But until then, thank you all so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to leave a like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, my name is Justin Hurst, telling you to keep calm and keep playing video games.